Blake Lively genuinely believed that she could escape this entire catastrophe by appearing to be the victim. However, after months and months of non-stop legal upheaval, late-night filings, PR spin, and what genuinely appeared to be a personal retaliation campaign against Justin Baldoni, the judge eventually said enough and quickly put an end to that fiction. Blake is reportedly upset because she was recently denied the one thing she most wanted, her legal bills. Furthermore, we are not discussing a few thousand here. Tens of millions of dollars have been lost in this court battle. Hollywood-level earnings. The kind of money that, when the bills come in, even wealthy celebrities start to freak out. And to be honest, Blake Lively appears worse as more information about this circumstance comes out. Because the judge grew increasingly agitated with Blake's legal team's aggressiveness in the last phases of the lawsuit, according to stories surrounding the case. Apparently, there were several attempts to coerce other parties involved in the lawsuit into contributing to Blake's legal costs, as well as frequent late-night submissions and enormous overstated legal documents. Imagine, for example, threatening female PR executives and witnesses behind the scenes while pretending to support women. That's what truly caused folks to pause and say, "Wait a second." The judge apparently became weary of the constant legal drama. What is actually going on here? At one point, he essentially informed Blake's side that he already had enough material and that they should stop flooding the court with letters and documents. And that says a lot. Judges, particularly federal judges, dislike it when individuals use the legal system as a weapon for personal grudges. They immediately see through that nonsense. Insiders monitoring this case further claim that Judge Lewis Lehman was utterly worn out by the ongoing turmoil surrounding Blake's submissions. To be honest, some of the strategies being discussed seem outrageous. We are talking about 70-page filings that are submitted late at night on the East Coast, with a lot of censored text, a ton of filler, and only a few pages that actually address the legal allegations. It began to resemble someone attempting to overpower the opposition until they gave up rather than someone battling for justice. Like a single, massive paper war intended to monetarily and emotionally drain everyone. The absurd thing is that Blake supposedly thought Justin Baldoni and the other parties involved ought to foot the bill. At that point, the dispute over legal fees became a major problem. According to reports, Blake attempted to use California Civil Code Section 47.1 to recoup her legal costs. The initial purpose of that law was to shield legitimate survivors against lawsuits brought in retaliation. Blake's detractors now claim that she attempted to use the law as a weapon against Justin Baldoni, his business, and even PR consultants involved in the case, despite the fact that the entire goal was to prevent victims from being financially wrecked after speaking out in public. First of all, the case itself was already collapsing in public, so people on the internet began pointing out how bizarre the entire approach was. Earlier in the process, a number of claims had already been rejected, and after text messages and supporting documentation began to surface, several charges were said to have become dubious. People frequently bring up the caravan incident, in which Blake allegedly claimed that Justin's entry into her caravan was improper, but subsequent communications purportedly revealed that she had welcomed him inside herself. Many people began to cast doubt on the story as a whole after that element was revealed. The legal gymnastics followed. Blake's team allegedly attempted to use California law in a federal court in New York about a film that was primarily shot in New Jersey. As if that weren't enough, comparable legal tactics allegedly appeared in Texas as well. At that point, this began to feel like, okay, so are we just shopping for whichever state law gives the best chance at forcing someone else to pay the bills? Just desperation, not accountability or justice. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni wasn't exactly giving up quietly either. That's what adds to the absurdity of the whole situation. This kind of pressure from two huge celebrities like Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds would typically cause independent producers or smaller Hollywood players to fold. However, Justin continued to fight, which supposedly surprised many in the industry because, keep in mind, Blake wasn't the only one involved. Ryan Reynolds also played a significant role. According to reports, at the height of the issue, Ryan was using his production firm, Maximum Effort, to influence advertising campaigns, rewrite scripts, and help mold the public's perception of Justin. According to reports, Ryan was completely in the trenches assisting Blake in running this fight in the background. However, an intriguing event then occurred. Ryan abruptly vanished the moment the public narrative began to shift. And people took notice right away. Ryan Reynolds was supposedly down in Bermuda attending sailing competitions, as if nothing had happened, while Blake was out there dealing with media and embarrassing red carpet questions by himself. I apologize, but that had awful optics. Because Blake and Ryan promoted this idealized image of a power couple to the public for years. Jokes on social media, amusing interviews, adorable red carpet moments, the entire Hollywood ideal package. However, Ryan was absent throughout what was likely Blake's most significant public problem to date. And the obvious question began to be asked online. Why did Ryan abruptly disappear when things turned ugly if Blake was really innocent and unfairly targeted as they claimed? To be honest, one of the main topics of discussion around this whole situation was Ryan Reynolds' abrupt disappearance. Because as the legal pressure began to publicly crush Blake, the same man who supposedly assisted her in her battle with Justin Baldoni was nowhere to be found. And once evidence, court documents, and settlement talks were made public, people began to notice how cautiously Ryan appeared to distance himself. Blake continued to double down in the meantime. At this point, the tale becomes even more complicated because it seems that Blake's team got fixated on collecting those legal fees back at all costs. In addition to financially chasing Justin Baldoni and his business, Blake allegedly targeted other individuals involved in the case, such as female PR specialists and witnesses. At that point, public opinion began to drastically change against Hillary. Because consider the picture Blake attempted to convey to the world. She presented herself as this courageous woman defying influential men in Hollywood. That was the story. However, stories of aggressive legal strategies targeting women who could not afford the kind of legal battle Blake and Ryan could afford began to surface behind the scenes. And some said, hold on. There is something about this that is completely at odds with the general perception. According to reports, the judge also saw that. Insiders said that at one point, the court was clearly agitated by the persistent pressure tactics employed during the legal proceedings. According to reports, the late-night filings, the massive, extensively redacted documents, and the constant motions began to resemble a tactic meant to emotionally and financially drain people rather than concentrate on the case's actual content. Since Blake's legal approach mostly relied on characterizing Justin Malden's countersuit as retaliation under California's survivor protection laws, it became impossible to overlook the fissures once people began delving further into the files. However, detractors pointed out the obvious problem right away. This lawsuit was not proceeding smoothly under California's jurisdiction. However, California law continued to surface in discussions pertaining to New York and even Texas procedures. Online legal pundits began referring to it as desperation. As if Blake's crew were trying to find any way to get someone else to pay these enormous debts. Furthermore, the figures being discussed were absurd. According to some sources, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's total legal battle cost close to $60 million. Estimates were raised after more conversations. In any case, everyone agreed that this became one of the most costly celebrity lawsuits in recent memory. The court appeared to be totally worn out at the conclusion. However, Blake's publicity machine was what really took this whole incident into the realm of celebrity rumors. Because serious crisis management personnel began to show up around Blake's camp as soon as she realized that public opinion was changing. Nick Shapiro was one name that kept coming up. It is said that he started assisting in the public messaging around Blake's court battle. And this was essentially the argument being promoted in public, according to reports. Women everywhere will no longer be protected from reprisals if Justin Baldoni prevails in these court cases. Listen, that argument is quite emotive. Additionally, it was obvious that Blake's team intended that people would emotionally relate Blake's personal lawsuit to those more general women's rights problems. However, detractors quickly retaliated, believing Blake was attempting to protect herself from criticism by enmeshing herself in broader social movements. Especially when information began to surface that cast doubt on some of her initial assertions. To be honest, the internet was no longer buying it. People began to perceive this as a tale of celebrity luxury gone wild rather than one of empowerment. Because Blake was attending the Met Gala with opulent items valued at more than most people's yearly income, when she was openly discussing emotional strain and legal difficulties. The timing couldn't have been worse, girl. Blake showed up at the Met Gala pretending everything was fine, just hours after the details of the lawsuit settlement were made public. Big smiles, flashing cameras, fashion interviews, and then she began discussing her personalized pocketbook, which was inspired by her kids' artwork, as if it were a profoundly moving work of art. However, the internet quickly discovered that the high-end designer has been creating those precise personalized bags for affluent customers for years. Then things worsened. People discovered that the bag was selling for about $10,000. Blake was now casually holding a small pocketbook encrusted with crystals that was worth more than most people's rent for months, while he talked about emotional difficulties and legal stress. The optics were appalling. The narrative went on, and honestly, Blake just kept making herself look more detached from reality every single week. However, what really stunned people after the case was what transpired during the settlement negotiations. It appears that Blake and Ryan were adamant on having an NDA, or complete non-disclosure agreement, included in the settlement. According to reports, they wanted Justin Baldoni to be forever barred from talking about what transpired during this whole tragedy. Since the story had already drastically changed online by this point, it in and of itself reveals how anxious they were about Justin eventually speaking out in public. However, it is said that Justin Baldoni and his wife Emily declined outright. Additionally, insiders claim that Emily Baldoni was crucial in maintaining her composure throughout the negotiations. According to reports, she fiercely resisted any attempt to publicly quiet Justin. The message was essentially straightforward. No agreement, no NDA. Since everything changed when Justin Baldoni refused to sign that NDA, it's possible that Blake Lively realized she had lost all control of the issue at that point. All of a sudden, Blake and Ryan were unable to manage the story behind closed doors and could no longer ensure silence. And that must have been horrifying for two individuals whose entire public persona was based on carefully controlling perception. Blake was reportedly desperate to avoid going to trial, according to reports surrounding the deal. Can you really blame her? The public narrative had already drastically changed by then. Rather than eliciting sympathy, each subsequent file seemed to raise more concerns. Every day, people were analyzing discrepancies on the internet. The strategy was being criticized by legal commentators. She was being targeted by even casual celebrity gossip websites. And the problem is that in high-profile situations like these, once discovery fully develops, it becomes risky for all parties. Emails, text messages, and internal discussions all come to light. Nothing remains confidential these days. Because there is no way to go back once everything is made public, this is precisely why so many celebrity lawsuits end before a trial. Blake ultimately consented to a settlement. However, this is the area that people continue to concentrate on. According to reports, no money was exchanged. No confession of guilt was made. Most significantly, Justin Baldoni left without being silenced. No lasting limitations, no gag order. There is nothing preventing him from giving public speeches in the future if he so chooses. There are now rumors circulating about potential interviews, documentaries, streaming partnerships, and even book offers, suggesting that Hollywood insiders already think Justin is getting ready for just that. According to some sources, Justin Baldoni might get millions for a full-fledged tell-all project regarding all that allegedly went on behind the scenes of It Ends With Us and the subsequent court battle. To be honest, people would definitely watch it. Because it revealed how vicious celebrity public relations operations can supposedly turn when reputations are in jeopardy. The entire story turned into one of the most strange Hollywood public implosions in recent memory. And that's precisely what Justin's followers think happened to him. They believe that before the evidence could even properly surface, Blake and Ryan utilized all of their famous power to publicly demolish him. They cite synchronized PR messaging, social pressure campaigns, media narratives, and celebrity ties, all working against Justin practically instantly once allegations were made. This leads to one of the most bizarre aspects of the whole narrative. Essential Voices. Since Vital Voices is meant to be a reputable non-profit organization dedicated to women's advocacy and empowerment, this circumstance truly stunned a lot of people. According to reports, they had given Justin Baldoni an award in recognition of his efforts to empower women and girls. It was a significant public honor. However, the organization publicly withdrew Justin's award nearly immediately after Blake filed her lawsuit. And because Blake Lively allegedly followed the group publicly on the internet, people started making connections very quickly. Critics also started speculating that the timing of things might have been influenced by influential Hollywood connections. Although it's evident that no one can confirm private conversations took place behind closed doors, internet debates erupted over how well-timed everything appeared. After Justin is publicly honored, accusations abruptly surface, the award is cancelled, and his reputation is severely damaged overnight. For many who followed the tale, it began to resemble a planned humiliation campaign rather than a coincidence. To be honest, that's the kind of content that deeply unnerves the people. Because ordinary people come to believe that the system is biased in favor of affluent celebrities once charities, media outlets, PR agencies, celebrity friendships, and legal pressure all start to combine. Blake continued to appear in public, which only served to damage her reputation. During this dispute, the Met Gala incident in particular came to represent everything that opponents found objectionable in her. Because Blake was out there promoting luxury fashion, talking about personalized items inspired by her kids, and walking the red carpet, as if nothing had happened, while the whole public was hearing about massive legal fees and psychological distress. And she was ridiculed on the internet for it. It was referred to as privileged, tone-deaf, and out of touch. Some even claimed that Blake no longer seemed to comprehend how the average person saw the whole thing. Because she was purportedly attempting to coerce others into paying legal fees, while also carrying luxuries valued at thousands of dollars, and portraying herself as a helpless victim. It was a harsh contrast. Colleen Hoover is another. To be honest, Colleen Hoover was drawn into the fallout whether she wanted to or not, which made this part of the novel very depressing. Colleen apparently worked closely with Justin Baldoni, and was significantly involved in the process when he first obtained the rights to It Ends With Us. By all accounts, he had a great deal of regard for the original work. However, people saw that Colleen seemed to publicly tilt towards Blake's side once Blake entered the picture, and conflict began to grow behind the scenes. She tweeted encouraging remarks about Blake, unfollowed Justin on social media, and remained mute when Justin faced intense public criticism. And that choice backfired terribly because a large portion of readers now hold Colleen accountable for leaving Justin too soon before all the facts became clear. She is accused by fans of becoming enmeshed in Hollywood celebrity culture and prioritizing status over devotion. Whether that's fair or not, the whole situation undoubtedly damaged her reputation. To be honest, that is the most absurd aspect of the entire incident. Nearly all of the participants left with some sort of injury. Blake Lively's meticulously constructed persona suffered greatly. Every time things go tough, Ryan Reynolds becomes oddly absent. A portion of Colleen Hoover's audience was offended. The PR culture of Hollywood was revealed in unpleasant ways. And Justin Baldoni, who many initially thought was done, managed to walk away while public sympathy began to develop for him. Blake Lively did not anticipate that conclusion at all.